Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the DVC Show, coming to you live from the Bob Varley Studio in Orlando, Florida. I'm your host, Pete Werner, joined this week at the table by my good friends, Marissa Valaton.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
I made them all remind me of what their titles were. She's the Director of Sales and Marketing with DVC Resale Market. Senior editor of DVCFan.com and member relations supervisor for the DVC rental store, Mr. Paul Krieger.
Hey, everybody.
And joining us for the first time on the show, DVC sales associate with DVC Resale Market, Ms. Linda Smith.
Good day, Pete. So glad to be here with you.
I'm glad you could join us.
Thank you.
And, of course, back in the nook, our producer, Mr. Corey Fiasconaro.
Welcome home.
So, this week we wanted to do a live show specifically to talk about the announcement of what the 2022 annual dues are. And some interesting changes this year.
Yeah, I feel like overall the surprises for me were lack of surprises. I kind of expected some more profound changes with annual dues. There are some sort of things that stick out that's worthwhile, but overall I thought that, the general overdue trend, or the general annual dues trend this year was pretty much like, just level it out, just make it a calm year. Maybe we've had enough negative press this year. We need to just make everyone happy a little bit.
There are some interesting changes.
Oh, yes.
A 7% increase at Grand Californian.
Yeah, that's the one that I'm still scratching my head on.
Me too. That's the one that caught me.
Why?
California?
Everything's more expensive in California.
Yes, says the girl from California.
It might be.
Cost of living expense there.
But also 0.1% increase at Riviera. This was a big concern coming into Riviera, that because of the Skyliner in particular, that there could be issues with the annual dues. Something I'm paying more attention to now that I've got an accepted offer on a Riviera resale contract.
Woo-hoo.
Yes,
Congrats.
yes.
Yay.
I bought 155 points at Riviera. I love the resort. I love it. And I want to stay there. And all, with the exception of 75 points, all of my points are resale, so of course they can't be used. So I am basically giving in to these ridiculous restrictions because I want to stay at the resort. So maybe it wasn't such a bad idea for them to do it anyway. But, Copper Creek, virtually no change, 0.15%, going up to 7... went from $7.59 a point to $7.60, so it went up a penny. At Walt Disney World, Old Key West, up 5%, from $8.36 to $8.81, really, when we round up. So I'm wondering why.
You have to wonder at the end of the day sometimes with annual dues. Is the age of the resort catching up with it a little bit? Is it having some additional maintenance that it's having to go through? The other thing that Old Key West has always suffered from is transportation costs. It is one of the only resorts where buses are your only option, and gasoline does not get any cheaper, folks. Right. So those prices continue to increase year after year. To your point earlier, Pete, I ate some crow on the DVC fan Facebook group because I did expect Riviera to go up a little bit this year. There were some initial concerns that came out regarding the tax assessments for Riviera. They were significantly down last year. I think the range was somewhere about 40 to 45% less than what they should have been for the tax estimates. It remains to be seen how they're going to recoup that. So I'm not going to fully just sort of back down from my position just yet, because these type of things typically are not exposed or really sort of pan out until we get to the Condo Association meeting. That's when, last year we heard about credits being offered. So the Grand Californian was still closed for a portion of this year. We may still learn of a credit towards the annual dues for 2022 as a result of that. It remains to be seen what happens there. But I'm not I'm not fully sold just yet that Riviera's out of the woods, but I'm not surprised either that it's sort of staying pretty even keel because it's the active selling resort. Right. Disney owns a lot of points there, so they have to pay annual dues just like we have to pay annual dues. But they want to make new owners feel pretty good about it. So.
I remember the last resort that I sold live when I worked for Disney directly was Copper Creek. And at the time, Copper Creek had significantly higher dues than any of the other resorts. And I remember we had sat in a meeting with leadership and kind of questioned them where are you pulling these dues from? And they had said, and they were slightly joking, but for real, they said the flat screen TVs. And so if you think about the significance of just TVs, right? So they didn't have to put new TVs in Copper Creek. They didn't have to put new TVs in Riviera, but any of the older resorts, they're going to have to go and put later, newer technology in. So that can be something as an old Key West probably eventually needs all new TVs.
Yeah, they also talked about those unbelievable cabins sitting on the water, which have a lot of upkeep and cost. At Copper as well too, but it's interesting because Copper was kind of bare bones down to the roof and the superstructure, and they went in and just redid things. So when you do that, it's kind of a cheaper way to do it a little bit, but then they gain somewhere else.
Again, because my script didn't show up where it was supposed to show up, so I'm all off. Forgot to mention, this is brought to you by, as all of our DVC content, the World of DVC, which includes DVCResaleMarket.com if you're interested in buying a DVC resale contract, saving a lot of money off buying direct. DVCRentalStore.com if you'd like to rent out your points or rent points. If you want to try DVC before you buy, great place to go. And, of course, the crack dealer of the World of DVC, MoneraFinancial.com, which makes it ridiculously easy to finance a DVC purchase and with a resale purchase, I should say. And we're going to be doing a show specifically on that this week. In this round of shows that we're doing this one live. We've got 3 more to record after this, so we're going to have a whole show dedicated to financing, what your options are when financing a DVC contract. But Monera Financial is certainly one of those. Okay. So, one of the things, Saratoga remains very close to being the cheapest in terms of point or in terms of annual dues. Went up 3% from $7.11 to $7.33. But right behind it, the next up on the list, and this surprises me, is Polynesian. $7.39 a point. But that went up from $7.05. So that was a more significant increase.
Yeah, I don't know if Poly owners ate a little bit of some of the ongoing, refurbishment costs that have been going on there. Typically when we see a refurbishment or a refresh of a resort, those budgets have already been allocated. So there's a reserve that's put aside for your resort. So typically I don't think that there's actually a correlation to that and annual dues rising. However, you don't know what potentially they got into in that project. Maybe they tacked on something else here. They just renovated the entire sort of front portion of that resort, so did owners maybe take a little bit of a part of that cost on as well as they redid the whole port day. I always get that. What's it?
Porte-cochere?
Yeah, whatever.
West Virginia.
Yeah, the entry, the front door.
They walk in.
Yeah.
The driveway. They redid the driveway.
Yeah.
Porte-cochere.
Of course, Vero Beach and Hilton Head remain the most expensive for annual dues. Hilton Head went up just under 1% to $10.07 a point. Vero Beach, depending on when you bought your contract, if you bought it after January 1st, 1996, your annual dues are a stunning $11.94 a point. That's up 6% from last year. And of course, the rationale behind that is because these are both located on the coast,
Right.
right by the water, and they get a lot more damage from storms that come in. And so there's that. Now, obviously, every year annual dues go up. I don't think we've had any years where, hey guys, you know what? We're cutting the annual dues. You know. Now, those of you on the sales side, how many people do you get? How common is it for you to get people selling their DVC contracts because they're just up to here with annual dues? Is it something you hear a lot?
It's interesting. Because I opened Vero Beach. I was there since 1995. Grand opening team. Love the resort. There's a lot that goes into that resort that is really, really good to keep costs down. It's made of hardy plank that's warranted for 50 years. Mm-hmm. But over time, I think the usage of a lot of families that have used it for years and years and years, and maybe they're not traveling, Pete, anymore. Now they're really thinking about long-term expenses. They're retired. Those dues are the highest. It sits right on the ocean, the taxes and all of that. And we do hear that from time to time that, yeah, the dues are kind of, Linda, they're kind of just catching up on us a little bit. And maybe it's time, because we got great memories, maybe it's time to move on. And so they're listing. But for someone that really wants to go there, and if you've been there, you know what it's like. It's a boutique. You got to own it really to get in there a lot of the time. Okay. So that's the other side.
Well, and I think with just annual dues in general, outside of just... Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Okay.
I'm just...
Outside of Vero Beach, with just dues in general, I think if you compare, right, if you say once you hit that break even on your purchase and you look at just your dues, it makes up anywhere from like 1/5 to 1/8 of what the actual hotel cost is. And dues increase on average about 3%. Versus hotel costs is about 7 to 12%. So I think in the long scheme of things, most members will go and look and say, all I'm paying is my dues. The cost, if I want to stay here cash, if they go and look at that rate, is this. All right, maybe the dues aren't so bad.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of times when you start to look at it in that perspective, if you're not going, then yes, that's when the dues start to kind of pile up and you go, why am I paying this?
See, I just wonder, like, you know, when the annual dues get announced, is there like a rush of people looking to sell?
Not usually.
No.
I didn't have that experience because they haven't been ratified, but they're proposed and it's all over the place. We all know what they are, obviously. But I haven't seen a rash personally of people calling and saying, we want to list our Vero Beach because of the dues.
Okay.
I would say, at least on the rental store side of things, we see a little bit of an uptick in people looking to rent their points because they're looking to sort of recoup that cost.
Right.
So they're looking to offset the cost of those dues. So we typically we've already had, in the past week, had a decent amount of discussions that are geared towards like, hey, saw the annual dues estimates coming out, just trying to plan ahead for those and get some cash in my pocket so that I can pay those. So some people are trying to plan that way. And I wonder if that's more like this is level one of, us trying to plan ahead. And then, if this doesn't work, then maybe down the road we'll sell the contract or something.
See,
like
and
that.
I have a number of contracts, and yeah, January sucks. It's like, oh god. I do like that you can either pay it off all at once or you can do it monthly. That's a nice option. But for me, I don't look at the value of my contracts by the dues.
Yeah.
And I've just sold a couple, but that's not because I'm trying to like lower my dues or anything. It's just I'm changing some things around. I sold a couple. I just bought another one. I get bored and like let's get rid of that and let's get that.
Change it up.
So for me, like I do look at dues that way, especially with something like Vero Beach, that it's like, oh, for the price of points, you get so much bang for your buck. But then when it comes to dues, it kind of flips on its head. And that's why, like, with me, it's like, oh, like, if I needed more points, like, I definitely get something like a Saratoga contract. But, like, when I think about, Vero Beach is good value for points, too. But, yeah, but those dues, they're significantly different than the other resorts, But
Yeah, I don't know. I was surprised by some of them, like the Grand California one. I'm like, oh, my God.
That's crazy.
Are they doing gold inlay now in the rooms? I mean 7% increase there.
I've not dug into it at all. You'll almost have to wonder, was there some sort of, law or some sort of new adjustment in terms of they just
would have to be.
Yeah.
It's not like they've done anything.
When did they raise
there.
the minimum wage out there?
I don't know.
I know that's still a fight as to whether or not Disney is is sort of has to comply with that. I know there's been some legal proceedings back and forth with all of that, but you wonder if that's just part of the reason why Grand Cal is going, because they've not, outside of redo the entire spa. I don't know of any significant things.
Well, you know,
they've
they
done
did.
there.
I'm from my understanding, the rehab of that spa was massive.
Yeah.
Was massive. They were looking, and I haven't seen it since it reopened. Right, it is reopened.
Yes.
My understanding was they were trying to model it along the lines of the spa in Alani, which
That's a spa.
that's a spa. That's a spa. But still, you know, you talk about the price of a Grand Californian. I mean, resale is really the only way to get it. I guess you can get it direct, but
With a hope and a prayer.
It's like winning the lottery.
yeah, the price of it is extraordinary. And then you got to wonder what a due's going to look like. What's the initial price point, and what are the dues going to look like for the
tower.
Disneyland Tower?
Yeah.
Because that's something I think that is something that people are going to factor in when they look at this. Say, okay, because it's probably going to be like $18,000 a point, and you know, dues going to be $1,000 a point.
I will have
That's
2
right, the
points,
minimum.
please.
So I'm interested to see how that's gonna play out. I also wanted to. I know I sound like a broken record on this, but these buybacks they're doing, something's going on. Something's going on, and I don't think. I have a feeling. My intuition tells me there's going to be some kind of announcement in January. I have no idea what it's going to be, but they seem to like to announce stuff in January. And these old Key West buybacks, in particular, you know, like I said, they just bought back a Boulder Ridge and a Bay Lake from me.
I don't know. We've got 2 good opportunities coming up here before the first of the year, potentially to sort of learn about something. The first one, I believe, is this weekend coming up, is the Destination D event here in Orlando
That's
at the
right.
Contemporary. So we might learn, you know, I would love to maybe get like an on-sale date for the Grand Floridian because that's going to go online at some point next year. And so I feel like they're going to be wanting to start selling that pretty soon, and then open up the point charts and things like that for that pretty soon. We might learn some more details about the Disneyland Tower, although that would be odd, being that they're out here at Disney World. But that would be a good opportunity to learn something. And then, of course, we've got the Condo Association meeting coming up on December 9th. And both myself and Amy are going to attend the Condo Association meeting this year.
It's
It'll-
date night. Date night at the Krieger House.
Date night at the Condo Association. I feel like, wow, I just feel really old now. Anyhow, no, it'd just be cool to actually be there for the meeting. It's a dog and pony show, for lack of a better terms. You know, they say with these annual dues announcements that these are estimates and they will be voted on and ratified at the Condo Association meeting. All that really pertains to is that they come out and say, yeah, we said yes, because you have absolutely no say in this process, even though there is a member representative. But coincidentally, that member representative works for Disney. So
There we go.
it's just how it all works out. But
Well, to go to your point about the buybacks, what's crazy is if you follow like direct sales directly from Disney, what the sales guides are selling, Old Key West is making up almost half of what their Riviera sales are. And I don't think we've ever seen that significant of another resort rifle the current.
I'm sorry, say this again?
So if you look at the numbers of what Disney's selling directly, they're selling around, given a given month, around 300 Riviera contracts. They're selling about 150 Old Key West.
Oh.
So I don't think it's ever been that significant.
Why?
The amount of points they're selling
For the
at a
tw-
non.
for- do you
live
think that's being
inventory.
driven by the 2056 expiration date on direct?
I think that coupled with that, plus I think they need a drop product. I think they probably just that $30,000 like.
And by drop
ticket.
product, you mean people that find Riviera too expensive.
Right.
They have something to drop
Yeah.
down to.
Or if they're complaining about resale restrictions, they have another option readily available. But it looks like they're pushing Old Key West pretty heavily, direct sales wise.
I would definitely agree with that. And you know what? It's interesting, all the years that I was there is that normally, now we had COVID in there, right? So it slowed everything down. But normally a resort like the size of Riviera would have been sold out by now. So you have to look at the fact that sales have slowed there. And now what do? As she mentioned, we've got to load up the bucket. We've got to get something else for that guest to come back to. And Old Key West makes perfect sense. They buy back low at 2042 contracts. They put the 15 years on it, but they sell very, very high. But the drop pocket's a good idea for them. It is. I don't want to start a rumor here, so don't say Linda Smith said this is going to happen. But wouldn't it be interesting to see with all the buybacks of Old Key West, Saratoga, and Animal Kingdom's right in there, a big price increase on the horizon because they've bought back low and they will sell even higher when that happens. They're due for it, guys. Due for it.
I also, and this is a nice segue into this, but we had our holiday incentives come out for DVC direct sales. And, typical stuff, between now and December 15th, if you buy this many points, it's going to be this discount, so on and so forth. But Riviera, Alani, but then out of nowhere, Boardwalk. Boardwalk is announced
what's going on?
That was crazy.
as one of the products. Now, there are always incentives for most resorts. They're just not announced. But the fact that they sort of coupled Boardwalk in with the general announcement this time, just odd. Just makes a head scratcher, so to say. I have my own theory on Boardwalk that I've
by
sort
all
of,
means.
Well, it doesn't it's just way far out there. But I think that I would love to see them sort of flip Boardwalk when we come up on 2042. So essentially, right before the current Boardwalk expires, they basically flip to the other side of the resort. They shut down the other side of the resort right before that, and then they start selling that as the new Boardwalk property, and then they can refurbish the other side of Boardwalk. I would love to long-term see the entire Boardwalk property become an entire DVC. I think that would be an awesome development, and it would be the perfect timing for them to do that. So.
Wait, you think take the hotel offline and make it all DVC?
Yeah.
I think you would have a fan backlash of epic proportions. That's a very popular hotel. It's a very, very popular. But then again, you know what? As Disney has shown time and time again, especially lately, they don't really give a crap what the fans think. They really don't. And maybe, you know what? I think there'd be a lot of people very upset. And I think it would end up having the opposite effect. It would turn people off to DVC. They'd be angry about it. And just as a statement of principle, wouldn't buy DVC. But I'm talking about the Boardwalk fans. Because Boardwalk look, every resort has its fan base. Boardwalk is particularly strong.
Oh, yeah.
And with good reason. Good reason. It's an amazing resort. I love Boardwalk. But I think, and then I don't know. I think there's going to be a tipping point with some stuff. Just Disney in general. They have a lot to say about this on tomorrow's live show. I think there's going to be a tipping point because in all the years I've been doing this, I've not seen the kind of anger and discontent that exists among the fan group.
Shadow this week was the perfect example.
Oh, don't
let's
even-
talk about that. Let's talk about that. What in the actual hell were they thinking?
It's, what a simple thing to keep, it got the guests engaged and involved.
Well, let's
and-
explain to people what we're talking about.
So Shadow is the roaming mascot of Hilton Head Island Resort. And so
Beautiful golden retriever.
Yes. And what was his owner's name, Linda? Do you know? Paul, do you know?
He goes by the name Blue Crab at the resort.
Yeah.
Who was like the Hilton Head historian. And so it's just, I mean, a staple of that resort.
And if I'm not mistaken, he was furloughed.
Yep.
Disney told him he was going to come back.
Yep.
Yep.
And so he didn't look for anything else. And he believed them.
Mm-hmm.
And then they cut them off.
Yeah.
So, we're, wondering with this new senior vice president, what the hell's his name again?
Bill something.
Bill Dirksen.
Bill Dirksen.
Mm-hmm.
We're, wondering, what's his administration going to look like? And I think we just got our answer. And why? Why? Why do that? Why take, something special, unique, that Hilton Head fans love, and do something like this? And it's all part of the narrative that is forming almost on a daily basis. They don't give a crap what we think. DVC in particular, I love DVC, don't get me wrong. I love the resorts and I love the experience. It's the management I don't love. They pay lip service to how much we care about our members. But none of that translates into actual behavior. And this is a perfect example of that. When I read that story, I had never heard of that dog or that man before that story. I've never been to Hilton Head. But as I read about it, and I read his social media posts about the experience and how hurt, that's what came through, how hurt this man was.
And when you think of the little children that go to Hilton Head every year with their families, I'm a big dog lover, and you've got a couple of Goldens. And, they also paid for Shadow's medical care all through that time. And so now to go somewhere and cut something, and you do it with the mascot of the island, it made me very sad.
It made me mad. It made me mad. And like I said, I got a lot to talk about tomorrow on the Tuesday show, and I don't want to put it all out there right now, but
This is the teaser trailer.
that earnings call. I've got some things to say about that earnings call. But I think this is the world we live in now with Disney. I've worked with these people for years. And behind closed doors, there was always when you'd mention the words Disney, and you guys as former cast members, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The mention of the word Disney fans are usually met with an eye roll. In public, oh, we love our fans. And sometimes they've been stupid enough to do it in front of me. It is no longer something that they keep quiet. It's now being enacted in policy. Screw the fans. And I said this on a Patreon stream. I happened to be watching a docudrama about the fall of Tsar Nicholas. Maybe these people should be students of history. Maybe they should be students of history. How revolutions happen. And I'm not suggesting a violent overthrow of Disney.
Mutiny on the Bounty.
But I'm telling you, I think they're underestimating how creative Disney fans can be. Not just in expressing themselves, but in finding ways to vote with their pocketbooks. And I don't know. But like I said, I'll talk more about that tomorrow. But I want to in the worst way right now. I want to in the worst way. But I it doesn't turn me off from DVC because the product for me, it allows me a flexibility. It allows me a flexibility. I still want to have Disney experiences. I love the resorts. I love the restaurants. The parks are a bit of a disappointment right now. But Alani will never disappoint me.
That's kind of the beauty right now of DVC. I think there are some disappointing parts to the parks. Like even my family and my son who's 4, it's like it's tough to get in line and rides and figure out the Genie Plus. But you know what? We'll go for a weekend to Vero Beach and we get our Disney getaway. And all of that is so worth it to be a DVC member. So he still gets his like Disney feel without us having to kind of struggle or battle through everything going on in the parks right now.
And it's also not the worst thing in the world to consider getting your DVC room and then driving up I-40 Universal. Not the worst thing in the world at all. And a lot of people do it. And I think you're going to start seeing DVC folks in particular, as they respond to some of these changes and they respond to some of this attitude. Looking at other things around Orlando. Hey, yeah, I've got these great resorts and I love it and I love DVC, but I'm going to go over here and do this now.
I mean, not even to mention the fact that if ever somebody was coming to visit Walt Disney World, I'd say you got to stay on property. You have to, because of all the transportation deals you get. Transportation's been cut down on a lot. We've been talking about that. You go to Magic Kingdom, you're walking. And it was already kind of a big haul to get from the parking lot to Magic Kingdom with the trams. But without them, like when I went to the Christmas party just the other night, from parking my car to getting to Magic Kingdom, it was 40 minutes because there were no trams. Because that's a long walk from the back of that parking lot, Scar 420, all the way to the front.
I'm dying for an explanation on this.
So now my advice is rent a car. Like, that's my advice now. Is like, you're coming to Disney, I think your best bet, rent a car, dude. Because that's like, the transportation's not great. And they've also used the thought of the Skyliner as a way to scale back on like things like, the Art of Animation and those resorts that have that Skyliner access, Caribbean Beach. So now when you're at those resorts that have the Skyliner, the buses are coming less frequently. But then you also hit the situation where how often the Skyliner will just stop for 10 to 15 minutes. You know what I mean? So that even makes it like, I don't even want to get on the Skyliner. You know what I mean? So then the buses are coming less. So it's like rent a car.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I'm tune in to the Diz Unplugged tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern time. I have a lot to say, but I think we're going to wrap this up here. How long have we been on, Fiasco?
33:15.
Yeah, it's pretty good. That's a pretty good one. That's going to do it, folks, for this week's episode of the DVC Show. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you again next week. Have a great one, and remember, stay out of the damn lakes.